Every year for the last 25 years, roughly 100,000 new people have shown up in the Greater Toronto Area. That's like adding a city the size of Guelph to the GTA annually for a quarter century straight. So if you want to understand why GTA real estate behaves the way it does, why prices climb, why they occasionally stall, and why some years feel like a feeding frenzy and others feel dead, it starts here. Population growth is the single most important driver of housing demands in this market. Today, I'm breaking down how that works with real numbers behind it. Here's the logic, and it's almost too simple. Housing is a basic human need. People need somewhere to live. So when the number of people in a region goes up, the number of homes needed goes up with it. That's the foundation of everything else in this series. In the GTA, population growth is almost entirely driven by immigration, not people having more kids, immigration. The GTA is the single largest recipient of new immigrants in the entire country. In a typical year, the GTA takes in roughly 1/3 of every new permanent resident entering Canada. And in recent years, that engine ran even hotter than usual. From 2022 to 2024, immigration in the GTA averaged approximately 145,000 people a year, well above the 100,000 long-run average. On top of that, we saw a rapid spike in non-permanent residents. International students and temporary foreign workers arrived in huge numbers in 2023 and 2024. That level of growth put real strain on housing capacity and is part of why the federal government has since moved to pull back and better manage the number of non-permanent residents in the country. So this number isn't fixed, it moves with policy. But here's the part that matters for you as a buyer, seller, or investor. Even with that pullback, the long-standing pro-immigration stance in Canada has structurally pushed GTA population to grow to average over 100,000 people a year for the past 25 years straight. That's the baseline you should anchor to, not the headlines of any single year. And here's a stat that surprises people. About 36% of new immigrants purchase a home within the first 5 years in the GTA. That climbs to 65% within 10 years, which is the same rate at which Canadian-born residents buy. So immigration isn't just a rental market story, it's a home ownership pipeline that plays out over a decade. Now, here's where a lot of people get this wrong. They assume more people equals an instant sales boom. It doesn't work that way, and this is important. New immigrants typically rent for the first several years here. So the relationship between population growth and MLS home sales is a longer-term lagged relationship, not an immediate one. That said, the pattern is remarkably consistent. Sustained population growth of 100,000 people a year has historically generated MLS home sales of nearly that same number, close to a one-to-one relationship over time. So when the population growth rises above 100,000, sales tend to climb towards that new higher trend line. When it falls below, sales tend to soften towards the lower one. If you remember nothing else from this video, remember this. Population growth today is a preview of the sales and the price pressure you'll see 3, 5, and 10 years from now. So let's talk dollars, because this is where it gets real for anyone watching this because they own or want to own a property here. Looking at 40 years of data, for every 1% increase in population, average GTA house prices have historically increased by approximately 5%. Zoom out further to get an even more clearer picture. Over the past 20 years, the GTA population grew by roughly 2 million people, and average home prices increased by about 800,000. Break that down, and every time the population grows by 100,000 people, average prices have historically climbed by roughly $40,000. Now, an important caveat, and I want to be straight with you about this. That relationship isn't perfectly tight year to year. When you see population growth and price growth pull apart from each other, like they did in 23 and 24, that's usually temporary. And it's a signal that one of the other 6 factors in this series is doing the heavy lifting instead. Interest rates, affordability, the economy, we're covering all of it in this series. So here's factor 1 boiled down. Population growth is the most important long-term driver of real estate values in the GTA. This region has added an average of 100,000 residents a year for 25 years running, driven almost entirely by immigration. About 1/3 of new immigrants buy within 5 years, rising to 65% within a decade. And sustained population growth of 100,000 a year has historically translated into roughly that same number of annual home sales. with every 1% of population growth adding about 5% to average prices over that time. It's not flashy, it's not a hot take, but it's the bedrock of this entire market sits on. That's factor 1 of 7. Next up, factor 2, the economy and why job security and GDP growth might matter more to your home's value than you think. If this was useful, hit subscribe so you don't miss it and drop a comment. Has population growth in your neighborhood matched what you're seeing in prices? I read every one.